the beneficial treatment that the federal government had towards the Japanese problem. And of course, this was the solution to the Japanese problem that was identified by the native sons and daughters of the Golden West. The Issei, the first generation of Japanese immigrants to the United States, and the Nisei, the second generation born in the U.S., were primarily sharecroppers concentrated in California and the West Coast states. In this U.S. government-sponsored film we just viewed, that defended the internment of the Japanese American citizens, and as we viewed it, wasn't it comforting to know that the United States had assembly centers and developed pioneer communities rather than concentration camps? I don't just like the way that the government portrayed the Japanese as very willing and very excited to leave their homes so that they can attend camps that provided them housing and nourishing food. It was such a happy moment for the Japanese to leave to these pioneer communities. And of course, what is all awe-inspiring about all of this is that they're being sent to the desert, where the land was raw, where the land was untamed, but it was filled with opportunity for them. Now, meanwhile, the Italians are going to be granted citizenship, and German prisoners of war are going to be enjoying furlough weekends in Kansas, where they can eat in restaurants that refuse to serve black U.S. soldiers. It was crazy times for people of color, for immigrants during World War II. American democracy is funny, isn't it? But let's go to a documentary by those who experienced the removal.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our West Coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. This picture tells how the mass migration was accomplished.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States government forced nearly 120,000 Japanese American men, women, and children to leave their homes to move to internment camps. These were innocent people interned for years without due process because of racial prejudice and fear of espionage and sabotage. President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the Secretary of War to relocate anyone of Japanese ancestry living on the West Coast to one of 10 internment camps. They were given only days to figure out what to do with their houses, farms, businesses, and possessions. Many were forced to sell or abandon their homes and belongings, as they were only allowed to bring with them what they could carry. They did not know where they were going or for how long. Each family was assigned an identification number and loaded into cars, buses, trucks, and trains. Japanese Americans were transported under military guard to 17 temporary assembly centers located at racetracks, fairgrounds, and similar facilities in Washington, Oregon, California, and Arizona. Then they were moved to one of 10 hastily built relocation centers. By November 1942, the relocation was complete. The Manzanar War Relocation Center was one of these camps located in the Owens Valley in California. The internment camps were surrounded by barbed wire, and there were guard towers with searchlights that were patrolled by military police. 10,000 Japanese Americans were crammed into 504 barracks, each with 8 people sharing a 20 by 25-foot room. There was hardly any privacy, with shared toilets, showers, a laundry room, and a mess hall. An oil stove, a single hanging light bulb, cots, blankets, and mattresses filled with straw were the only furnishings provided. The internees tried to make the situation more bearable by forming churches, clubs, recreational programs, shops, and even a newspaper called the Manzanar Free Press. Many internees had jobs in the camp digging canals and ditches, growing fruits and vegetables, raising livestock, and working professionally as doctors, nurses, teachers, police officers, and other jobs. After America started to win the war in 1944 and 1945, internees were allowed to leave the camps. Japanese Americans were interned because of fear and racial prejudice. However, no Japanese Americans were ever charged with espionage during this time. In fact, nearly 26,000 Japanese Americans served in the U.S. military during World War II. In 1988, the U.S. Civil Liberties Act granted a $20,000 payment and an apology to 82,000 former internees. The apology letter stated, "A monetary sum and words alone cannot restore lost years or erase painful memories. Neither can they fully convey our nation's resolve to rectify injustice and to uphold the rights of individuals. We can never fully right the wrongs of the past, but we can take a clear stand for justice and recognize that serious injustices were done to Japanese Americans during World War II. In enacting a law calling for restitution and offering a sincere apology, your fellow Americans have, in a very real sense, renewed their traditional commitment to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. You and your family have our best wishes for the future." The Manzanar War Relocation Center is now a National Historic Site. It was established to preserve the stories of the internment of nearly 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, and to serve as a reminder to present and future generations of the fragility of American civil liberties.
We are setting a standard for the rest of the world in the treatment of people who may have loyalties to an enemy nation. We are protecting ourselves without violating the principles of Christian decency. And we won't change this fundamental decency no matter what our enemies do. But of course, we hope most earnestly that our example will influence the Axis powers in their treatment of Americans who fall into their hands.
Okay, so students, just to understand what's happening, what happened to the Japanese is exactly what's happening right now to Mexican undocumented workers. As we saw in the film clip for today, the GEO group has had increased funding, and there's a big prison industry, industrial complex that's benefiting from ICE's roundups. And so today we are having these camps being built and set up for Mexican undocumented workers. So let's appreciate what happened to the Japanese experience, and we can recognize what's going on with regards to the Mexican.